We are glad you're back to Public Affairs on Peach. I'm Karen Greer. This morning we're talking about child sexual abuse, and I want to show you some very sobering numbers right now. 1 in 10 children will be sexually abused by the time they turn 18. Of children who are sexually assaulted, 20% of them are abused before the age of 8. 90% of child sexual abuse victims know their abuser. Hard numbers to believe, I'm sure. With me now, Tiffany Sawyer from the Georgia Center for Child Advocacy, an amazing organization that's doing something to change these numbers. Thank you so much. These sobering numbers, I think, are a surprise to many people.
Absolutely.
This should not be a surprise, though. This has been a problem for a while.
For a long, long time. And unfortunately, this is something that it's been going on for so long, but as a society, we don't feel comfortable talking about it. And that's why we need people like Dave Moody, like other survivors, to come forward and really talk about this issue. Because unless we talk about it, children are going to be dealing with this in silence.
Well, help us determine, how can you tell if a child has been sexually abused? Is there any telltale sign?
Well, you know, there are not a lot of physical signs. That's pretty rare, but we see oftentimes kids have a change in their behavior. So they may be a child that's really outgoing and all of a sudden now they're withdrawn. Or they're a child that is now acting out sexually or aggressively. So the kids that oftentimes we see with these behaviors in class where they're getting suspension after suspension, we need to dig deeper. We need to see, is there some kind of root cause that's going on that's causing this child to act out in this way? And oftentimes we just label those kids as bad children.
Right, behavioral issues.
Right, we don't see that there could be some underlying issue that they're dealing with that's causing them to cope in this way.
How often are you finding that the abuser may be in the home?
So, as the statistics stated, more than 90% of the time the child knows the offender. And what's more often devastating is that this is somebody that not only the child knows, but somebody that the family knows, that the community knows really well, because oftentimes the offender goes out of their way to groom a child. So they will groom that child, but groom the family to make them seem like they're this wonderful person. And then we often have that sometimes where it's in the family. About 40% of the time it's somebody within the family. So we need to pay close attention to the adults that are around children, but not just adults. We have a lot of times, as in Dave's case, we've got older youth that are offending on younger youth, and it could be because they were sexually abused at a younger age and now they're just modeling or mimicking what's happened to them, or they don't really know and they're just kind of mimicking that behavior. So we need to really monitor those that are around children and work with children on a regular basis.
Tiffany, what happens if a child does come forward and admit, tell, share that secret with a parent and they're not believed? Then what happens?
Yeah, that's really an unfortunate situation, and it does happen. We know that sometimes more devastating than the abuse is that somebody has not believed them. And so we do see that at the center, where we have kids come forward and the non-offending caregiver is not believing the child. And it's a devastating thing, and so we try to work with that child. We want to make sure that the child is first in our line of work. So we will do whatever we can to wrap services around that child, whether they're in foster care or in some other situation. But you know, a lot of times because of that, children will take back what they've said. They will, they'll decide, well, you know, people aren't believing me, so I just need to deal with what's happened to me and not disclose. So they'll say, well, actually, that really didn't happen. And then years later, we find out it did. So we need to help children understand that it's okay to come forward, and we need to help parents understand that, you know, there are services out there that can help them. A lot of times when the abuser is the breadwinner in the family, it's really hard for, you know, mom or the other caregiver to step forward and say, I got this, I can take care of the child, and my child's going to be my first priority. So it's a very, very difficult situation, especially when this is a loving person in the child's life, loving outside of this abusive relationship.
I want to talk to you about some of the other things you do for the kids when you have them in therapy. So we're going to take a quick break. Stay with us. We're going to talk more about the Georgia Center for Child Advocacy's prevention programs. That's when Public Affairs on Peach returns. Get a cup of coffee. We'll be right back.